right now, the fires raging in California are also becoming a big scandal. It would seem that there's a lot of shenanigans, and a lot of people are having memories, flashbacks, bad ones, of the Maui fire. We've invited our good friend Brent Haynes, Catholic attorney and freedom fighter, to be on the team to help us better understand. Brent, good morning to you. Thank you for your time.
Good morning, Joe. Good morning, everyone.
So the mayor in Los Angeles, she gets a scorching yesterday because she cut the budget, apparently, not just a couple of months ago, of the fire department by $17+ million. That seems like a bad decision, especially given that they seem to know that the Santa Ana winds come every year. It's not like this was a surprise. What's going on?
Joe, this is a sad situation, and of course, we all need to be praying for the people in California and all the other people out there who are suffering from situations like this. The point of talking about this morning, though, is not, it's not to dwell on some unnecessary, some catastrophe. The point is that this is worse than it should have been.
Yeah,
it's worse than it should have been, because of not just government mismanagement, which is inherent in bureaucracy no matter what you do. Some bureaucracies operate better than others. Again, that's why you want good government leaders. Not just because of corruption. There's always some corruption to a certain extent. But this was compounded, and on top of government inefficiency, on top of corruption, you have that progressive, woke California ideology. And that has made this worse, and that is a shame, because that means people have suffered more than they needed to suffer in this situation. These winds happen every year. Forest fires are part of living in California, just like mudslides are part of living in California. And it's worse than it had to be because of their progressive, woke policies, all the way from the city and county level all the way up to the state level, and even with the feds. Here's a headline for you, Joe. How many years of corruption and how years of corruption and management led to L.A. running out of water in the middle of the Palisades wildfire.
Yeah.
And it's just a story. One of their local government units, they had to replace one of the officials because of alleged mismanagement. It goes on and on. Their fire hydrants are out of water. Why are the fire hydrants out of water? California has had record rains. Just in the last 2 years or so, California has had record rains. Why didn't they catch that water? Why didn't they catch that runoff? Why didn't they store it? And for people who don't live in the area or don't follow this kind of news, the water supply in California is a major, major problem. They have to have an extensive water system out there because Southern California is naturally dry. That's why Mulholland Drive out there is named Mulholland, because that man got the water system going for Southern California. And Gavin Newsom, in recent years, has torn down 4 dams. Now, he tore them down to help restore natural waterways and fish movement for Native Americans, and that's perfectly fine. But why didn't he put in a replacement? Why didn't he build another reservoir? Years ago, Californians voted to spend money on a reservoir or more reservoirs, and Gavin Newsom hasn't built any. He tears down 4 dams that had water available for firefighters, and then Gavin Newsom doesn't do anything to replace them. And so approximately a day into the Pacific Palisades fire, they ran out of water. Imagine the firefighters are at your house getting ready to save it, and all of a sudden the hydrants run dry.
Amazing. It's insane.
And
California's been having water problems for a while now, though, haven't they?
Well, and what's another reason, Joe? Well, of course, the Endangered Species Act. There's a tiny fish called the Delta smelt. It's an endangered species, and it lives, by some reports, exclusively in the heart of the state's water distribution system. That affects water going to 35 million Californians. And Gavin Newsom and the progressive environmentalists would rather go out of their way to protect this tiny fish than make some sort of reasonable accommodation to provide water for the citizens of Southern California and to make it available for emergencies like this.
Hey, do you remember the actor do you remember the actor James Woods?
Yes, I saw it, and I saw him on TV. Yeah, I saw him on TV.
He lost his house in this fire. But he also reported yesterday, he said, and I'm going to quote right off of his Twitter feed. He says, actually, because one of the claims is the insurance companies were canceling coverage. He says, actually, one of the major insurance companies canceled all the policies in our neighborhood about 4 months ago. Like, just the thought of that strikes me because all the people who are losing their houses, I know they might be very wealthy or what have you, but Americans, no matter what level of income they happen to live at, they tend to live beyond their means. They live in debt, Americans do. So big house, small house, we're all in debt. Cars debt, house debt, credit card debt, loans debt, debt. All of these people, think about how much bankruptcy is going to be the order of the day for most of these people. That seems rather insane to me. If they're not going to be able to be covered by their insurance, don't you think so?
Well, and look, I'm no friend of insurance companies. I've dealt with them in an adversarial situation as an attorney many times over the years. They can be extremely difficult to deal with. Hardly anybody, after they get to be a certain age in life, doesn't have a story about dealing with insurance companies. But in this situation, can you blame them? In California, they don't do the prescribed bans, or they don't do the burns to control the fires the way they're supposed to. They're not making water available so that it's available for the fire departments. They're engaging in diversity, DEI training and recruitment instead of focusing on getting the proper firefighters in there. And the insurance companies come along and they look at this risk and they say, we can't afford this. And let's face it, the insurance companies go in and then bail people out, and then they go bankrupt, and we're bailing out the insurance companies also. Before the fire started, I saw a news story just a few days ago about the insurance companies cutting someone's homeowner's insurance. And they did an overhead shot taken from a drone, obviously, of a house in California sitting in the forest, essentially. I mean, it was surrounded by forest. Look, homeowners need to realize if you have a house in an area prone to forest fires and you live in a forest, your house is at risk. And when you go to get insurance, the insurance company is going to calculate that risk. And regulators in California are trying to be pro-environmentalists. They're trying to keep everybody happy on the environmental side. They're trying to keep prices down and refuse price increases for insurance companies. They don't want to make accommodations for insurance companies. And then they engage in, or refuse to engage in, to be more precise, reasonable fire control management policies. So you can't really blame the insurance companies on this one, because California set themselves up to fail on this.
I don't even know what to say. I'm even looking at a video that James posted on his X feed. It's just mind-boggling. And I know every year there's videos just like this, because forest fires and out of control fires are part of life in many parts of not just our country, but other parts of the world as well. But just to think that the people in Maui, when that happened, I covered that story with Jason Jones. A lot of those folks, they were having to live 2 or 3 families or like 2 or 3 generations in a family in the same house because they couldn't afford to pay the mortgage otherwise, because you're talking about $1 million to have a shack in a place like Maui. Malibu can't be far off from that in cost. And again, this is the devastation of this. I don't know. I honestly don't know how people recover from that. Maybe they walk away. Maybe they move to Oklahoma where it's more affordable. I don't know. But will anybody be held accountable for all of these things that you just mentioned? It doesn't seem like there's ever going to be any accountability. Nothing ever changes, it seems, Brent.
Well, it certainly doesn't change in California very often, does it? San Francisco threw out their ultra-progressive district attorney just a few years ago because crime was getting so far out of control. They tried to recall the district attorney, George Gascon, in Los Angeles, and that failed. But in the election last year, he was absolutely trounced because, the voters had too much on crime. When things get really bad and your average person starts to notice and starts to get angry and starts to think about it, then, sometimes there's accountability. But the far left interests in California are well entrenched. They control the levers of power. And as one commentator said, as long as the unions out there, such as the SCIU, are in control, there's not going to be any change. Here's a headline for you, Joe. Forest Service halts prescribed burns in California. Is it worth the risk? The date of the headline, October 24th, 2024. And that's from a PBS station. That's from KQED. So that's your National Public Radio affiliate in California, one of them. Hardly, a conservative, anti-progressive entity. And that's their headline. Forest Service halts prescribed burns in California. Is it worth the risk? There are organizations in California, local organizations, that exist exclusively for the purpose of doing these preventative burns. And for people who aren't real familiar with it, the idea is you go in and you do what's called a controlled burn, and it gets rid of the undergrowth so that when a forest fire comes along, it won't have so much fuel that it just grows out of control. And look, prescribed burns have to be done very carefully. They have to be done at the right time of the year. There are only 2 seasons in California when you can do it. If you miss your window of opportunity, you miss it, because you can only do it under very controlled circumstances. And sometimes the prescribed burns themselves get out of control. But the local burn associations in California were doing their burns. The state was doing some burns, though I've seen reports that they weren't doing enough. And then the federal government came in last fall and missed the window and said, we're not going to do it.
That's amazing.
Is it worth the risk? No, apparently not. Apparently not. The LA mayor cut the budget for the fire department. The budget for the fire department was approximately $800 and some million. She only cut it by almost $18 million, but still, the LA fire chief came out and warned about problems with that. But guess how much they spent on the homeless in Los Angeles, Joe?
Yeah, I know.
800 and some million for the fire department. 1.35 billion for the homeless.
Wow.
1.35 billion for the homeless. Now, it turns out the controller said they only spent about half that, which is probably good for the taxpayers out there. But why wasn't the money properly allocated to begin with?
I don't know, but now that all these homes have been burned, they have all that land. They could rebuild a homeless shelter right there on the beach in Malibu. I mean, who knows? The opportunities are limitless.
Here's one last headline for you, Joe. One last headline. Firefighting is mostly white and male. A California program aims to change that.
Oh, man. How about we get the best person to do the job? How about we just focus on the right tool for the right job and forget about all these DEI shenanigans? Hey, Brent Haynes, thanks for your coverage of this.